Robert Dahl's insights on democracy demand attention, and his latest work, Democracy and Its Critics, is poised to become a classic alongside his earlier acclaimed work, A Preface to Democratic Theory. The latter earned him the 1989 Lipincott Award for its enduring significance, and it might even be sensible for the American Political Science Association to consider allowing a two-time recipient to avoid confusion in the future. Dahl's virtuosity now takes the form of conducting a masterful dialogue of reason, orchestrating an advanced seminar that delves into the major ideas and arguments within the realm of democratic theory. The reader becomes a participant in Dahl's brilliantly detailed discussions, where few issues are left untouched, and every train of thought leads to a logical conclusion. The atmosphere resembles a sustained seminar, enhanced by Dahl's creative use of heated dialogues and verbal confrontations, reminiscent of a playwright's techniques. Characters such as Aristros and Demo, majoritarian and critic, and advocate and critic, engage in rigorous debates on guardianship, majority rule, justice, and the common good, while maintaining an objective tone. The work is driven by Dahl's intense passion, a fusion of his commitment to democracy and reverence for reasonableness. For Dahl, democracy is the ultimate ideal. Yet every argument must bow before the sovereignty of reasonableness. Dahl's overarching historical analysis outlines three transformative phases of democracy. The initial stage was the birth of democracy within city-state dimensions like Pericles' Athens, the Roman Republic, and Renaissance Italy. The second involved the rise of large-scale representative democracy, spanning the 18th to the 20th century. Lastly, Dahl questions if a third democratic transformation is underway, potentially spreading democracy beyond the confines of political participation and extending into economic activities. Although Dahl is hopeful about this third transformation, his vision is intriguingly nuanced. Despite the current global spectacle of transitions toward democracy, he remains skeptical about its expansion beyond established democratic nations. Instead, he directs his enthusiasm towards ideas prevalent in the 1960s and 1970s regarding the advancement of democracy within the United States. This includes better inclusion of minorities and women in politics, and the pursuit of greater income equality, a focus often aligned with the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. While acknowledging Robert Dahl's personal inclinations that have shaped his perspective, the omission of a more robust examination of democratic transformations in a comparative context raises several concerns. Notably, Dahl's neglect of this vital subject is troubling for several reasons. In his prior work Polyarchy, Dahl displayed considerable contemplation on the conducive conditions for polyarchy's development, but in this book, he seems to underplay this critical aspect. While he acknowledges the significance of beliefs, attitudes, and political culture for democracy, he only briefly references Almond and Verba's civic culture. In the present era, Dahl's insights into the specific cultural attributes that either foster or hinder democracy's progress would be invaluable. Furthermore, by not delving more extensively into the issues of democracy in a comparative framework, Dahl appears somewhat insensitively attuned to the significance of institutional structures for democracy's fate. Questions arise. Why, for instance, have presidential systems, with the exception of the United States, often transitioned into periods of authoritarian or military rule? In contrast, cabinet systems with prime ministers have demonstrated better preservation of democratic governance. Also, why has no other nation chosen to replicate the US's extreme version of checks and balances? Isn't it noteworthy that the US system, wherein the executive, legislature, and even internal departments and committees hinder each other, results in policy making by unintended outcomes. This often leads to a convoluted compromise that hardly resembles coherent policy design. Dahl's robust faith that democracy and reasonableness are inseparable might explain the American enthusiasm for this process, trusting that if the process is democratic, the outcome must be rational. While Robert Dahl has made substantial contributions to enrich our understanding of democratic theory, it might not be unreasonable to suggest an empirical examination of democratic transformations within political cultures beyond the United States and established Western democracies. This request is not unjust, considering that Dahl himself emphasizes his engagement in both normative and empirical theory. Yet, his empirical world largely draws from the works of philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, Locke, Rousseau, Pareto, Mosca, Montesquieu, Tocqueville, Sartori, and others. While this historical landscape is rich and familiar to Dahl, the contemporary world also presents perplexing realities that necessitate exploration for an expanded comprehension of democracy. Hopefully, comparative analyses of democratic transformation will occupy a significant place in Robert Dahl's future research endeavors.